You know, I'm so thankful that I learned how to use the jets before the Draugr came out, because the Draugr is built for exactly what I want my jet to do, affect the ground game. This thing has a good variety of viable loadout options, and today we're going to discuss the loadouts, what's good, what's bad, and how best to use the Draugr to help you win more games. This guide assumes that you can fly jets already. If you don't know how to do that, then you can see how I learned in this video here. The XFAD-4 Draugr is a drone bomber added to 2042 in patch 7.2. It plays just like the attack jets on offer, with the caveat that, because it's a drone, you cannot bail out. No render zooks for you. Instead, trying to bail out starts a self-destruct timer. This is neat to have, but you'll never use it because the ground is a faster out. One consequence of this is that you're unable to land the Draugr, hop out and repair, which is an option you would have with a jet, provided that you can find a flat enough place to land. Let's discuss loadouts. Once unlocked, the Draugr's base loadout is the 20mm dual cannons heavy explosive, the non-nuclear EMP bomb, and the repair function. Now this is a massive problem because you have no countermeasure. So let me tell you how your first PvP with a fresh unlocked Draugr is going to look. You spawn, maybe you get a few kills and you start to get some attention. Then oh no, what's that? An infantry player with a stinger. You're absolutely dead. Without unlocking and equipping the countermeasures for the Draugr, you're essentially flying around a clay pigeon, begging to be shot at. This means the first thing that you're going to want to do is head into solo co-op and grind out until you get the DRFM jammer. Let's see, how many kills do I need? 180 kills with no countermeasures? That's insane! This is by far the worst thing about the Draugr. The original build isn't viable against players, so you need to put time in to grind out the unlocks, which I think is an absolute terrible idea on DICE's part. Personally, I loaded up a solo co-op game on Orbital to unlock this, and after what felt like an age, I finally got the jammer. This was made even more difficult by the fact that this thing is glitched in solo and co-op, so if you die and try and spawn in it again, you'll end up under the map. So do yourself a favour. If you die while grinding here, and you will die, just quit the game and start it up again. The jammer itself is an infuriating piece of equipment. Activating this will block lock-ons for around 5 seconds. However, this will not stop missiles which have already been launched. Once the jammer ends, the system will be back online after roughly 11 seconds. If you've been flying aircraft for a while in this game, you've likely developed a muscle memory of waiting until you see the missile incoming warning before you pop your countermeasures. When playing the Draugr, this is something that you have to try and break, because you need to activate the jammer as soon as you see the lock-on warning. Otherwise, you're going to be taking a swift anti-air missile to the face. Compound this issue with the fact that the Wildcat's AA missiles lock on so fast that sometimes even if you hit the jammer before the missiles are launched, the server will still allow the Wildcat to send them. This drives me and many other pilots absolutely insane because it is completely unavoidable. So I guess at least now there is one single pro for taking the Wildcat's AA missiles. No, still not worth it in my opinion. Yeah, the jammer sucks, but it's your only option if you want to use this vehicle and have any sort of success. When it comes to weapon loadouts, there's actually a decent number of options. Let me quickly cover what I don't recommend using first before jumping into the good stuff. The non-nuclear EMP bombs are just a weak choice here. The EMP status debuff itself is terrible in its current form, so wasting your bombing slot on this isn't worth it. It does do a little bit of damage if you directly hit your target, but compared to other options in this slot, it's very underwhelming. You're much better choosing something else. The anti-vehicle rocket pods were so close to being good, but they did them real dirty. Unlike the ones on the jets, these fire in a burst, which means they deal damage insanely quickly and can be difficult to react to. But for some reason, DICE decided these would work similarly to the incendiary grenade launcher vehicle weapon or the Ram's missile launcher, in which you need to fully use all of your rounds before the reload begins. This reload is painfully slow too, which means if you've spent all of your rockets, which you will do all the time since it's the only way to reload them, you'll frequently find yourself in need of them to defend yourself and be completely screwed. You're also opening yourself up to be even more vulnerable against your biggest threat, attack jets. Oh yeah, you can definitely hit jets with these things, but good luck convincing the server that they actually hit. These pods dust like crazy. Use at your own peril. Okay, so what are we left with? The 20mm dual heavy explosive cannons, the 20mm dual armor piercing cannons on the primary slot, and the Mark 77 kerosene bomb and the Mark 84 JDAM bomb on the secondary slot. The 20mm dual heavy explosive cannons are great for dealing with everything really. They do very good splash damage, which means they're perfect for nailing infantry, and they do pretty decent damage against vehicles, especially lighter vehicles. As with all similar weapons, just be sure to avoid overheating these. The 20mm dual armor piercing cannons are primarily useful against vehicles. They do no splash damage and are very difficult to hit infantry with. I would say on average you can typically do about 50 to 65% damage to ground vehicles with these weapons on one single pass. However, the spread on these is crazy, so be absolutely sure to burst them in order to hit those initial long range shots, then turn to spraying as you get closer. It's weird, with the attack jets, when you attack ground targets, you'll typically want to use the third person camera because the zoom level you get is much greater, making picking out targets much easier. But with the Draugr, you'll want to use the first person aim, since it not only zooms, but you get an infrared vision which can massively help you pick out targets. Be sure to use this so that you can see your targets early so that you have the full attack run in order to beam them. The same can be said with the bombs, use the first person view. Speaking of the bombs, the Mark 77 kerosene bomb is the ultimate anti-infantry weapon. This is what makes the Draugr such a massive threat in my opinion. Not only does it explode, immediately killing any infantry caught in the initial blast, but it laces the area with fire, which melts your enemies like they're trapped in a 100-watt microwave which is on fire and also in hell. The fire is really hard to determine the radius of, so infantry can sometimes be sitting in the flame and not even realize it. It's perfect for clearing out flags being attacked and also clearing out buildings. Yeah, this thing burns through buildings, so have fun dropping this on the D1 bunker on orbital to clear out those enemies camping it. It's so satisfying. Bomb the shit out of it. Nice 5-piece. The Mark 84 JDAM bomb is an anti-vehicle weapon that doesn't do a whole lot of splash damage. The JDAM actually locks onto targets and slightly guides itself towards its target. However, you need to drop it from a sufficient height in order to get the lock-on effect to work. I usually angle my Draugr up, find my target, drop the bomb, then chase the bomb down, providing fire with my primary in order to get enough damage for the JDAM to finish it off completely.
He can't nuke me.
The problem with the JDAM is that using the lock-on function opens you up to easily being countered with countermeasures. Thermal smoke and APS are very common on most ground vehicles at this point, which means a lot of your bombs will be easy for the enemy to deal with, especially if you drop them from higher altitudes, since the enemy will have longer to react. I feel like really high skill players will use the JDAM from low altitudes in order to prevent their bombs from locking on, and thus making it so that they're much less likely to be countered. But this is very hard to do, since you need to get a direct hit in order to get any sort of good damage out of these. It should also be noted that the lock-on is more of a gentle guide rather than a guaranteed hit. Vehicles that move fast can avoid this by just moving, so using this against faster targets might end up being a waste. The damage on these is massive. 65 damage to main battle tanks and TORs, 85 to wildcats and calves. You definitely can't complain about that.
Trash.
Next down. Is there something I'm forgetting? Ah yes, the ATGMs, but they're probably identical to the ones you can find on the jet, so it's probably not even worth reviewing them. Wait.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
It means that they do double damage. I'm not quite sure why the hint doesn't just say that. The ATGMs at first seem decent, but a little underwhelming compared to what looks to be the superior JDAM bomb. But pair these missiles with a dedicated recon player who is laser designating targets, either with the soft lam or tracer dart, and these weapons become quite good. When targets are designated, this weapon locks on really fast and deals double damage, so a 35 hit on a main battle tank becomes 70, which by the way is the maximum damage that you can do to a tank in this game in a single hit. Since the ATGM only does 35 damage to a Wildcat, a designated Wildcat will still take less damage from one of these missiles than it would from the 85 damage done from a JDAM bomb. Either way, if you land a hit with the damage boosted missiles, finishing them off with any primary weapon is easy. Yes, they are lock-on weapons, so they can be easily countered with thermal smoke and APS. But if you can get a shot in, then you are practically guaranteed a kill. Compared to the JDAM, since the missiles are fully guided, provided no countermeasures, your payload hitting is almost assured. And since you're using these with a designated recon player, you can also have them tag enemy aircraft and nail them out of the sky too, in only one missile. So not only does this beef up your ground game, but it also buffs your air game. Of course, this does all depend on whether you have a good recon player willing to put in the time to help you, but if you can convince one of your squad mates to play this role, then it is very fun. But most of the time the JDAM is going to be the best bet compared to these. The way I look at it, there are a couple of ways you can build using these, and it depends on what you want to primarily target. You can build this full anti-infantry, take the HE rounds and the kerosene bomb and go crazy, or you can do a full anti-vehicle with the AP rounds and JDAM. Personally, I like to go somewhere in the middle. I'll usually have an anti-infantry option and an anti-vehicle option, so that I can be reasonably effective no matter what I go up against. My preferred loadout is the AP cannons with the kerosene bomb, because I can't get enough of that all-cleansing fire, but I'll sometimes go back to the HE cannons and the JDAM whenever Cabal yells at me about how much he likes the JDAM. The only other option you have is whether you want to have the ground radar sensor or the CIX-Val-Raven cloaking device.
Just remarked. Fuck yeah.
The ground radar will spot all ground vehicles for you, which makes picking out ground armor much easier, in turn giving you a much longer time during your attack run to be dealing damage, since you don't need to waste time looking for them. The CIX cloaking device turns your Draugr transparent and makes you reasonably hard to spot. This doesn't make you completely invisible, but it does make you hard enough to spot that it can make a difference, especially in dogfights, where you're typically at a disadvantage. I've gotten the upper hand on many a jet pilot because I've popped this at the correct time and left them circling all by themselves. This deactivates if you use your primary but not your bombs. It also deactivates if you take a significant amount of damage, similar to the stealth on the stealth chopper.
Whoa! Draugr's down.
Checked out, yeah. Honestly, these both have their uses and you'd be good with either of them. I personally take the cloaking since I find that it saves me in dogfights quite often. Time for some tips. Save your kerosene bomb from multiple targets. It can be very easy to drop this little ball of death on the first sign of life you see, but if you get into the habit of saving it for groups of enemies, then you will massively increase your kill count. Nothing is more frustrating than seeing a huge clump of bad guys, but noticing your mini nuke is on cooldown. Dropping it on an objective that is being captured is also a good use, since that way you can PTFO like the rest of your team. Even though it won't be reflected on the scoreboard, saving an objective from being capped is worth many more tickets than a few kills would get you.
High enough to correct anything.
Kerosene and EMP bombs can kill aircraft if you hit them directly. This is very tricky to do, but this is just another use which I think isn't immediately clear, since one of them is primarily anti-infantry and the other is primarily useless. The JDAM can benefit from soft lam and tracer darts, making the lock easier and also making it so that you can lock onto aircraft affected by the designation. Though it still suffers from the same issue, it's a gentle guide, so if your target moves too quickly, the bomb will miss. We also tested the tracer dart on infantry with the JDAM, but this glitched out the lock on the JDAM like crazy and we couldn't get it to tag and lock properly.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
You cannot turn faster than the Su-57 Felon or the F-35 Panther, so if you're in a turning dogfight with a player of equal skill and you continue going around, then you will not win. Try to find a way out, whether it's by finding some cover to maneuver around to try and lose them, or pop the cloak and try and trick them into overshooting you. Due to the unreliability of the countermeasure on this thing, map awareness is even more critical than with any other aircraft. Learn where to hide to let your jammer replenish, and where you can find cover to block incoming missiles. For that reason, I suggest learning the jet before you dive into using the Draugr. Doing so will save you a lot of wasted deaths. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, why not watch another? And if you like the content, please consider subscribing, dinging that bell and hitting that like button. Have a great day. Hope I see you on the battlefield.